The truth about people who love everyone. Jung's theory. The most unsettling smile is not the cruel one. It is the smile that appears on someone who says, with liturgical calm, "I love everyone." It sounds like a blessing. It feels like a room filling with warm water. But if you stand there long enough, a question begins to ache. Who exactly is being loved when love is poured outward like fog, thick, glowing, and incapable of picking out a single face? Carl Jung would watch that smile and not be charmed. He had seen too much sunlight used like a curtain. He believed the human soul throws a shadow the way a lantern does when you lift it up. The brighter the flame, the sharper the silhouette. Proclaim universal love too loudly, and a shape forms behind you, the neglected animals of your own psyche. The parts that feel anger, hunger, disgust, envy. The teeth that never learn to chew without biting. The paradox is terrible and true. The promise to love everyone can be a promise to never meet anyone, least of all yourself. Imagine a hall after a festival. Gold confetti glitters on the floor. Candles smoke. In the middle stands a person whose voice has been a public fountain for months. They have hugged strangers until their shoulder blades ache. They have said the right words, safe, beautiful words about how all of us are one. The crowd adores them, but watch closely. When a single wounded man approaches with a story that doesn't fit the liturgy, his shame smells like old iron. It cannot be bathed away with slogans. The fountain hesitates. The smile holds, then widens to cover the hesitation, and the man retreats with his shame intact. The room applauds anyway. Love has just refused the one thing it claims to do, relate. Jung did not worship the difficult for its own sake. He simply mistrusted shortcuts to heaven. He spoke of the persona, the face we polish for the world. He spoke of the shadow, the sack we drag behind us, stuffed with everything the persona refuses to carry. He noticed that people who advertise their goodness with a radiant intensity often hear a whisper nobody else hears. If the light ever goes out, what remains? To prevent that hour, they keep adding fuel. They offer love as a permanent flare. Yet on the walls, the shadows grow crisp, and those nearest to them feel colder than they did before the sermon began. Universal love can be a kind of anesthesia. It numbs jagged edges, paralyzes judgment, and calls the paralysis kindness. I accept everyone, it says, and in that sentence performs an erasure. You are not everyone. You are not a field of wheat. You are crowned and wounded and peculiar, smelling like your own storm. To be loved is to be seen in that crown and those wounds. To be everyone is to be dissolved. The person who loves everyone may be asking you, without saying it, to dissolve for their comfort, to become a concept they can bear without confronting the small, stubborn objects in themselves they cannot accept. This is not accusation. It is diagnosis. Jung had no patience for moral vanity, but he had endless patience for the machinery of the soul. He would suggest that indiscriminate love is a defense. When love is poured into the abstract, it spares the lover from a meeting with the concrete. The concrete bites back. It says no. It smells like something. It requires boundaries and may return your tenderness with indifference. Loving humanity is warm and round. Loving a person is granular and sharp. It changes your shape. Consider the aphorism nobody wants to hear. Sentimentality is often the prettiest mask cruelty owns. Watch the person who insists on harmony at all costs, who calls anger unspiritual, who cannot bear conflict. They will step over a bleeding truth to keep the tablecloth white. They will pressure the wounded to hurry their healing so the room can return to pastel. They will call your refusal to be absorbed into their glow selfishness. They will offer mercy in public and withhold justice in private. None of this is intentional villainy. It is what happens when love becomes an atmosphere instead of an act. Hold the image. A clear lake at twilight. The surface reflects the sky. You could mistake the reflection for infinity. Then a stone flies from the shore. thrown by a hand that trembles anger, fear, hunger, grief. This is the moment the universal lover dreads. The ripples break the pure mirror. Patterns replace the illusion of eternity. The lake becomes itself again. Jung would wait there, beside the stone, and ask the question universal love avoids. What do you do with the hand that threw it? Do you love the hand? Do you tell it to stop existing? Do you listen to what it could not say without a weapon? People who love everyone often have a complicated history with that hand. Somewhere in childhood, a storm made noise. Somewhere in adolescence, desire knocked and was punished. Somewhere in a first romance, jealousy was too ugly to confess, so it was rebaptized as generosity. These are not crimes. They are adaptations. The persona grew to protect the family, the friend group, the belief system. But it grew so beautifully that the person inside, it began to starve. The shadow grew fat in the basement and learned how to whisper through the vents. Strange dreams. Sudden contempt for those who do not appreciate the glow. A private tantrum performed with surgical quiet. Listen closely. This is not an attack on love. It is a defense of it. Love that cannot discriminate is not love. It is fusion. Fusion is a relief. It is also suffocation. Jung's psychology is an art of separation first, union later. You discover where you end and I begin. And then, from that frontier, you build a bridge. The person who loves everyone tries to build a sky instead of a bridge. But you cannot walk on sky. And the person who builds it eventually floats alone. Picture a woman in a modest dress who runs a shelter. Her city knows her first name. She answers every message at midnight. She splits her sandwich at noon. She tells the story of her own childhood with restraint, enough for donors to soften, but not enough for anyone to see the ghost in the corner. Her nickname among staff is Saint. When a volunteer quits, she writes a letter about compassion fatigue, laced with poetry, and adds another shift to her week. She apologizes when the coffee is cold. She apologizes for the rain. Now watch what happens whenever someone on her team expresses anger. A resident throws a chair. A colleague bursts into tears because a policy was ignored and a boundary crossed. The saint glides in like warm water poured over ice. She lowers her voice. She uses words like grace and hold space and unconditional. She never asks the hard question. Who will pay for the consequence that love refuses to levy? Instead, she absorbs it. Then she wakes at 3 a.m. and glares at the window, hating the people she is paid to adore, hating herself for hating herself for hiding the hate. In public, she glows. In private, the glow burns. Jung would recognize her immediately. He would not mock her. He would draw a small diagram on a napkin, a circle labeled persona, a darker circle behind it labeled shadow, arrows showing energy pushing forward and sinking back. He would say the persona is not a lie. It is a uniform. You need it to do your job, to ride the subway, to say hello without telling your life story. But when the uniform becomes identity, the person goes missing. The missing does not go away. It gets angry about being missing. That anger looks for exits. One exit is the people you love, who begin to feel like thieves stealing the self-hours she refuses to claim for herself. People who love everyone often overuse the feeling function without developing its spine. Jung wrote about 4 primary psychological functions: thinking, feeling, sensation, intuition, and the way each has an inferior twin. Feeling, when mature, discriminates values. This is good for you. This is not. This nourishes. This poisons. Feeling, when inflated by archetype, becomes sentimentality. Everything is precious. Nobody is wrong. All things are permitted in the name of kindness. It sounds like a song. It behaves like a flood. It erases banks. The shelter director builds an ark every day and cannot tolerate anyone who mentions the cost. Behind her stands an archetype, the great mother vast as the sea. In her positive aspect, she feeds, shelters, forgives. In her negative aspect, she devours, suffocates, drowns. The saint has identified with the mother's light. She cannot admit the shadow of the same goddess without feeling monstrous. So the shadow acts in secret. It infantilizes residents in the name of warmth, refuses to discharge abusers because everyone deserves another chance, punishes colleagues who set boundaries by calling them cold, then leaks coldness in a quieter, cleverer way with drawn smiles, silence in meetings, a habit of forgetting the names of those who don't worship properly. There is also projection. Jung said what we refuse in ourselves, we are doomed to meet outside. If you disown your anger, you will find it in the toxic coworker. If you disown your hunger, you will find it in the entitled client. If you disown your need to be chosen, you will work until you are chosen by a God that never existed. The saint says, I love everyone. The shadow hears, I am desperate to be loved by a world that owed me love and didn't pay. The persona says, I forgive. The shadow keeps a ledger more precise than a banker's, tallying every slight. One day the numbers won't add. Enantiodromia, Jung called it, the violent reversal where the overfed persona collapses into its opposite. The saint explodes, or quietly quits, or begins to drink, calling it communion. Do not assume this story belongs to women. Substitute a man. He might call his persona servant leader. He might be a therapist, a pastor, a manager whose emails end in solidarity. He has never told his father he is angry. He has never told his mother no. He calls boundaries fences built by frightened egos. In the mirror, he is the savior archetype in a modern suit. He loves everyone and grows quietly cruel to the few who don't swoon. He loves everyone and cannot name his own desire without choking. So he performs desire for others and calls the performance purpose. Around him gather grateful faces and a small number of people who are afraid to say what they see. They see that love everyone is being used to avoid choosing someone. They see that consequence has been outlawed so that no one has to endure guilt. They see that dissent is framed as a wound so it can be bandaged rather than argued with. They see that the persona's goodness is a weapon with a silver edge. If you criticize it, the accusation turns back on you. You become the unloving one. This is how bright rooms become prisons. Jung does not offer a moral cudgel. He offers a map. Step 1 is always confession, not to a church, but to yourself. Admit that your love has a smell. Admit that it is tangled with hunger, fear, revenge, loneliness, pride. Admit that you offer it to avoid conflict as much as to heal the world. Admit that sometimes you hold people to prevent your own fall, not theirs. None of this cancels the good you do. It only gives your goodness bones. You begin to see the reason Jung trusted conflict. Not the theatrical kind, not the war staged to avoid grief, but the small argument that rescues reality from your illusions. The shelter director tries this. When a resident throws a chair, she does not smooth it away. She names the fear inside herself first. She acknowledges the feeling of being unsafe. She tells the truth. If you throw another chair, you cannot stay here tonight. She says it gently and means it. A terrible quiet follows. Her body shakes. Something in the room grows more adult. For the first time that week, she goes home at 6, not midnight. She makes soup. She does not answer her phone. She sleeps. The world does not end. Here is the deeper turn, the one that makes the previous scenes feel suddenly tilted. People who love everyone are often in love with an image, an archetype that has seized their ego and dressed it in borrowed clothes. Jung called it inflation, when a human identifies with something greater than human and swells with meaning. It feels like being chosen. It can happen with gods, movements, nations, lovers, even ideas like nonviolence or tolerance. The inflated person becomes the avatar of a principle. Anyone who resists is not just disagreeing. They are wounding the principle itself. And the inflated person is permitted, no, obligated, to defend it by any means that do not stain the costume. Inflation explains the missionary who smiles while trespassing, the activist who dehumanizes obstacles in the name of humanity, the teacher who loves the kids and cannot stand their parents, the therapist who adores the wounded but despises the ordinary. It explains the difference between real compassion grain by grain, accountable to the reality of a person, and its counterfeit, which prefers clean abstractions to messy lives. It explains why love everyone so often feels like standing in a beam of light that does not warm you. This is where Jung's language becomes both mythic and precise. Archetypes are patterns that organize experience. Mother, father, hero, victim, trickster, savior, judge. They are communal. They do not belong to you. When one captures you, it lends you its power and borrows your name. You begin to speak from it, not to it. The savior, for instance, is a real pattern, older than any religion. Identified with consciously, it can guide selfless acts. Identified with unconsciously, it eats the ego that carries it. The person who loves everyone is often carrying the savior without knowing the weight, while refusing the companion that must walk with it. The judge who discriminates, the warrior who says no, the trickster who cuts pretension with humor. Without those companions, love becomes a net that catches everything and drowns. Jung's other crucial concept is projection. He warned that what we cannot stand in ourselves, we will project outward, and what we secretly long to become, we will also project onto others, the golden shadow. This is why indiscriminate lovers often idolize saints and celebrities. They have put their unlived assertiveness, or intelligence or eros, outside themselves, then worship it while calling themselves humble. It is safer to adore a star than to admit you are meant to shine in a specific small arena where failure is probable and anonymity likely. Projection fuels disgust as well. The person who loves everyone may harbor a private hatred toward the boundary setter, the realist, the one who refuses a hug. They call them cold, controlling, unspiritual. In truth, they are meeting their own ignored necessity. The realist inside them is banging on the door. When they finally let him in, an unexpected thing happens. The warmth that remains grows hotter. We must talk about eros and logos the way Jung did, not as mere sex and reason, but as two ways of relating. Eros as connection, logos as differentiation. Indiscriminate love exaggerates eros until it becomes a swamp. Everything connects. No one decides. Healthy love balances eros with logos. It says, I feel you. I also know me. It says, I will hold you when you weep. I will also hand your consequence back to you because I respect the shape of your life. To distribute everything to everyone is to avoid tragedy by dissolving it in sugar. To love a person is to choose, and choice creates loss. And loss is what gives love its spine. The religious language here is unavoidable because the psyche is religious, even when the mouth is not. People who love everyone often carry a private theology. They must atone for something. Universal love is their penance. They may have been told, explicitly or through atmosphere, that their anger killed someone. They may have been punished for wanting, told their desire was the reason daddy left or mommy broke. So they scrub desire and become living incense. The room smells holy. Nobody breathes. At this depth, Jung's theory becomes compassionate surgery. He would not rip the incense burner from their hands. He would ask what it's made of. He would look for the original wound. He would introduce the shadow like an old relative who was exiled unjustly. This man knows how to say no. This woman knows how to walk away. This child knows how to play without guilt. Let them back in. You will not become cruel. You will become textured. Individuation is his word for the long, imprecise journey from identity to wholeness. It does not end with loving everyone. It begins with withdrawing projections, collecting your shadow, greeting your contrasexual soul, the anima in men, the animus in women, so that your idea of the opposite gender is no longer borrowed from pulpits and pop songs. It continues with an experiment in love. Love not as sentiment, not as policy, but as an encounter between two differentiated lives. The lover who loves everyone is invited to try something riskier. Love someone and let them hate you for a while. Love someone and let them change without you orchestrating it. Love someone and stay, when staying means watching them meet their own shadow without rescuing them from its teeth. This is also where the feeling function matures. It begins to distinguish. You learn the difference between pity and compassion. Pity sees a victim. Compassion sees a person. Pity needs to rescue to feel alive. Compassion can sit still while another suffers, because it trusts the other's psyche to metabolize pain. Pity devours. Compassion metabolizes. The indiscriminate lover will feel this distinction like a dissolving of an old drug. The high fades. The work begins. And in the background hums a principle Jung never tired of pointing at. Wholeness is not goodness. Wholeness includes the outlawed parts. When you bring them home, your smile changes. It becomes specific. It could even look smaller. But the room warms. People step closer. What your love lost in radiance, it gained in heat. Now the weight. Talk to anyone who tried to put down the glow and let their shadow in, and they will tell you it felt like treason. They had built identity on being the warm room. They had saved people with that warmth. To introduce bone felt like betrayal. The first weeks were chaos. Saying no and crying afterwards, telling someone you can't meet, and hearing the accusation in their silence, enforcing a rule, and then lying awake at night, bargaining with the ceiling. Their friends, used to endless yes, were not all kind. Some called it burnout. Some called it selfishness. The halo slipped. It stung. And then, like a winter seed cracking, something living pushes through. The person who loves everyone begins to notice faces. Not generic, not category, not the homeless, the children, the hurting, but Mary who tells sly jokes and steals pens when nervous. Amir whose anger covers terror of abandonment. Talia who needs you to be blunt, or she will hoard your gentleness and grow weak. The indiscriminate fog becomes weather, specific to each field. The feeling function so proud of its blanket learns to knit differently for each body. The ache in the shoulders changes from martyrdom to labor. It hurts, but it is clean. There is grief here. It comes in strange shapes. You grieve the person you pretended to be, and the applause they earned. You grieve the wasted years of being easy. You grieve the intimacy you avoided by calling everyone family and nobody friend. You grieve some people who leave when you stop being a drug. The grief is wise. It teaches you what your hunger tried to extract from universal love. Maybe it was safety. Maybe it was belonging. Maybe it was absolution for a private guilt. Grief does not lecture. It needs the soul back into an animal that can walk. Jung said you don't become illuminated by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. He wasn't declaring war on beauty. He was insisting that beauty without truth is cosmetic, and cosmetics wash off when it rains. When you meet your shadow without fainting, you collect scattered powers. Anger turns into boundary. Envy turns into instruction. Lust turns into vitality that can play without consuming. Aggression turns into courage that can protect without dominating. These conversions are small sacraments. They make you trustworthy. Trustworthy love is often quieter. It does not announce its scope. It does not generalize. It chooses and pays. It says, I am committed to your growth, not to your comfort. It says, I will not rescue you from a consequence that will teach you who you are. It says, I will be here while you shake. It tells the truth when lying would keep the peace. Sometimes it walks away, and the walking is not an abandonment, but a bow to reality. Jung's ethics are ruthless that way. He believed rescue can be a form of theft, stealing a person's encounter with their own soul. When you love like this, you learn to stomach another's anger without panicking. Their anger becomes information, not indictment. You learn to hold your own hunger with the same steadiness. You are less fascinating to yourself. The cosmos has stopped revolving around your persona and more useful to others. The person who loved everyone and burned out now loves fewer and burns less. And those few become surprisingly many because this love reproduces. People treated as adults begin to treat others as adults. The fog lifts and the forest appears. You can finally see the paths. Here is a stranger miracle. Your so-called enemies become interesting. In the earlier life, the boundary setter was a villain. Now you want coffee with her. You want to learn how she says no without shaking. The realist you scorned teaches you logistics. The person you called cold becomes a mentor in the art of not lying to yourself about what you can carry. Love expands by contraction, like a heart. It pushes blood out, pulls blood in, and the rhythm keeps a body alive. Remember the golden shadow. There are traits you admired in saints and heroes that were yours all along. When you stop worshiping them at a distance, you can pick them up in their ordinary size. You will not be Mother Teresa. You will call your aunt and forgive her for being complicated. You will not become the Buddha. You will sleep 8 hours and remember someone's birthday. You will not save the world. You will plant a garden and hang a wind chime, and on a bad day, you will not murder anyone with your silence. This is how archetypal energy flows into human days without exploding the vessel. Do not expect your culture to cheer you on. The economy of applause rewards extremes. Glowing saints, outraged prophets, charismatic dissolvers of boundaries. Institutions prefer unanimous love because it keeps the budget stable. Movements prefer unanimity because dissent muddies slogans. To become a person is to become inconvenient. You will be asked to return to your post as aura generator. You can decline. Declining will cost you things you thought you couldn't live without endorsements. Friendships based on your usefulness, the narcotic of being needed. You will discover that need is not love. There is a sacred, stupidly ordinary sentence that separates indiscriminate love from the real. I can't fix you. I can't meet today. I can't love everyone. I can love you. And because I'm real, I will fail at that too. And then we will talk. And something living will replace the fantasy that we would never bruise each other. Jung's psychology does not grant you godhood. It returns you to earth, to seasons, to limits. This is not resignation. It is relief. Stardom was heavy. The field is lighter. If you listen carefully, you can hear the old music trying to call you back. It offers safety in the plural. People, humanity, all beings, the collective, the world. Those words have their place. They steady the mind when orders grow cruel. But they are also a place to hide. Jung's invitation is unglamorous and dangerous. Come out of hiding and select a face. Give up ambition for the universal in order to receive the burden of the particular. Let love develop a conscience and a spine. We tell ourselves that indiscriminate love keeps us safe from hate. In truth, it keeps us safe from intimacy. Hate is not the opposite of universal love. Intimacy is. Intimacy forces us to see where our yes ends. It exposes us to retaliation, misinterpretation, boredom, the awkwardness of being a body that needs back. Universal love floats above all, that like a helium balloon with slogans on it. The balloon is beautiful. It also slips out of your hand when you need it most. So start where your life is. Do not resolve to love everyone. Resolve to meet one person without anesthetic. That means noticing your impulse to impress, to soothe, to disappear. It means noticing theirs. It means confessing the history behind your impulses. The mother you became for your siblings at 9, the church that punished desire, the job that taught you you are only as valuable as your exhaustion. It means listening for Shadow's voice, not to obey it, but to invite it out of the walls and into a chair where it can speak without turning the lights off. Write a letter you will not send to someone you love, but have never argued with. In it, tell the truth about your anger, your envy, your fear. Notice where your words become noble fog. Stop. Rewrite that sentence until it contains a fact with a smell. Then notice what you want from them that they will never give you. Let that want bleed. This is the place your indiscriminate love tried to irrigate with sweet water. Monsters live under dry bridges. If you meet them, they become wolves you can train. Bring back the parts you gave away to saints. If you admire bravery, practice a small, stupid bravery. Tell a truth in a meeting where you once smiled. If you admire gentleness, soften your voice with someone who reminds you of the parent who dismissed you. If you admired faith, keep a promise so small that nobody praises you for it. These microacts escort the golden shadow from the shrine to your kitchen. You will feel smaller and larger at once. If you run a room, a team, a classroom, a household, replace universal love with rules that protect reality. Rules are not cruelty. Rules are the infrastructure of tenderness. A rule says, the people here will not need to earn my softness by flattering me. They will receive it because the structure frees me to be warm. A rule says, I do not give you everything because I respect the places where you must give to yourself. Universal love made you compulsory. Rules will let you become optional again, which is where love happens. Do not fear the hour when someone calls you unloving. You will feel old shame rise like ground fog. You will be tempted to pull the lever and flood the room with warmth. Pause. Ask, is there truth in the accusation? If so, apologize as a person, not as a halo. If not, let the word pass through you. The shadow you have met will keep you from needing to be spotless. The love you practice will be able to absorb a scratch without collapsing. In dreams, you may see the archetypes come down from their pedestals. The mother grows small enough to cook. The savior sits and is tired. The judge removes his robe and laughs. The trickster offers you a slice of cake and whispers a warning about your tendency to pose. Eat the cake. Take the warning. Walk into your day with less light and more eyes. That's what the psyche asks. Not purity, presence. At the end, what remains of love everyone is a quieter aspiration. To be a person in whom love can find a body. That body will be moody, limited, hungry, sometimes cruel. You will catch yourself performing mercy to avoid a conflict you need to have. You will slip. You will correct. The circle is human-sized now. It fits. The shadow walks beside you. It points at your temptation to float and gently kicks your heel. This is an hour of history where abstraction is cheap and bodies are expensive. The marketplace rewards glow. The algorithms praise the universal statement. Jung's theory is a rebellion against that economy. It says the soul grows on particularities. The awkward apology, the fair consequence, the yes that costs, the no that hurts, the refusal to call it love when what you mean is escape. You are allowed to be smaller than your slogans. Smaller and warmer. There's a last secret, almost embarrassing because of how obvious it is. Once said, the people who truly love wide are the ones who learn to love narrow first. They survived the indignity of specificity. They endured being disliked by those who preferred their saint. They stopped treating the world as a field for their virtue. They allowed their eros to bond with logos, their tenderness to bind with justice, their warmth to weave with wit. They did not become gods. They became neighbors. And the neighborhood changed. If you have felt seen here, not flattered, but seen, then let that seeing grow into your next conversation, your next boundary, your next refusal to rescue. Let your shadow eat with you. Train it, Be trained by it, and then turn your face towards someone who is not everyone and let them matter. If this opened your eyes, subscribe to Boring History, because the truth is never boring.